He's not. Okay. Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Chair Bone. Members of the Board of Supervisors, John Ford, representing the Planning and Building Department, requesting that the safe parking and safe shelter ordinance be extended for a period of 24 months. This ordinance was originally adopted as a pilot program to determine how it would work and what regulatory elements may need to be modified or refined. The program would largely allow safe parking, safe shelter facilities as a principally permitted use, subject to compliance with the provisions of the ordinance. The pilot program was approved in June of 2022 for a period of 18 months. Unfortunately, nobody has taken advantage of the ordinance to develop one of these facilities. So as part of the decision to recommend continuing this, staff inquired with organizations who may be interested or would normally be associated with operating one of these to see why we'd not received any interest in this. And the feedback that we received was that the organizations weren't aware that the ordinance and the pilot program was available. So what we want to do is extend it for a period of 24 months, and the Planning and Building Department will really do a public outreach campaign to see if we can generate interest and see if there's grant money available to facilitate opening such facility or facilities. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sorry, Personnel.
Thank you. Through the chair, Director Ford, we, at the time that we passed this, did a press release. Is that correct?
Yes.
And will we continue to try to inform in that manner and possibly some other ways?
Yeah, we will absolutely do a press release. We will reach out, perhaps even go so far as to hold community meetings to talk about things that could be done to facilitate development of these types of facilities.
And thank you for that. And to extend the 24 months, and for a pilot program, we would need some kind of activity to, compare to see if it's working. So I encourage the communities. This is an opportunity if the organizations want to try to help the houseless or people that are in their cars. This is a way to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And is the process pretty easy? Can you just highlight, how, I know it would be different for different areas, and but this really, people reached out and said there's not an opportunity, especially in the rural, like southern Humboldt area, and then to have nobody come forward is difficult when we know that this kind of thing is needed.
Yeah. Yeah, so in response to your question through the chair, the process to have one of these permitted simply involves developing an operations plan. 3 different types of operations plans are kind of specified in the ordinance. But what that would do is just demonstrate how it complies with the provisions of the ordinance. That would be brought into the counter, and a zoning clearance certificate would be issued at the counter. This is basically an over-the-counter review and approval.
Okay. And do you want to bring them forward? Do you want to? Supervisor Wilson has some people from Arcata that are going to talk about the Arcata program, and Supervisor Hansel and Under Sheriff Bro are here also. Or Sheriff Hansel, I don't know. He might run for something later on. Who knows?
He supervises some stuff.
Yeah.
As part of this, I want to take an opportunity to, there's a couple folks here, and I think, is Director Beck on Zoom today?
Yes, she is. Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to highlight Arcata's safe parking program because it's the only safe parking program in Northern California. And actually, it's pretty rare that there's functional safe parking programs anywhere in California as much as we talk about it. And I wanted to highlight it because as much as we want to advertise the idea that we have this opportunity through this ordinance, I want people to know that we have an example of an operating one now that's been pretty successful in its endeavors and has some good numbers to share. And so I've asked Arlene Spohr, the director of Arcata House to come give us just a bit of some highlights and maybe opportunities and challenges, and give a little bit of an explanation of the program as Arcata has set up, and Arcata House, the city of Arcata set it up. Arcata House is the contractor. So, Darlene, if you could give us an explanation a bit to let people know what they might be getting themselves into, and from a positive perspective. Thanks.
I can.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
It's always my pleasure to speak about how amazing our staff are and the amount of people that they really can help. We started in April 2022. We were asked to start a safe parking program, and it was the first of its kind up here, and so we had a big learning curve, and what has resulted is a very successful program, I might say. To date, from April 29th, 2022 to now, we've provided 14,625 bed nights. That's one person, one bed night. We've served 128 individuals and 92 households. We currently have 24 people enrolled in that program. Of the people that we've served altogether, 14% have exited to shelter, 9% to temporary housing, 30% to permanent housing, and 54% exited back to, 27% exited back to the street. They just weren't ready. The difference between our program and other programs is ours is a service program. It's not just a parking space. When people come to us, they are ready to work toward getting housed, and we've been very successful. People have a safe place. It's in a gated area. There's community space. We provide socialization activities like art and music and television and games. We do intakes, and there's program rules, and we work to help people on a housing first approach. If people come in and they behave while they're in there and follow the rules, whatever their history is, wherever they are right now, we're going to work with them. We have 24-hour staff. Everyone gets an opportunity to work with case management, who helps them apply for entitlements, connections to medical services, connections to jobs and schools for their children, or any other service that they need. We provide housing and job search. On site, we provide 2 meals a day, drinks and snacks all day, hygiene stations like porta potties and hand wash stations. People have access to showers at one of our other facilities and laundry support. We provide access to vehicle registration and insurance assistance. People have an address to receive mail at, which is very important when they're applying for benefits. And they have access to all of the other services that Arcata House Partnership provides. And I think that is probably one of the greatest benefits of having a program with an organization like us, because we do connect with all of the other services. People take ownership for their own area. We see people planting little gardens in pots and keeping their areas clean, and we really appreciate that. I just want to take a minute to talk about a couple of case scenarios, because we're talking about real people here. One of the people I want to highlight is a 71-year-old woman who was homeless for the first time. She had been evicted in the first day of being homeless. She contacted one of our partner agencies, and they contacted us to see if there was anything we could do. We immediately connected with her. She was frightened. She had limited mobility, and this was the first day of her ever being homeless in her life. We were able to get her into the safe parking program. She had a dilapidated SUV. We helped her keep it operational. She moved into the safe parking program. She was in and out of the hospital for several months while she was getting stable. She obviously, while she was housed, was in poor condition. We eventually got her housed, permanently housed on a rapid rehousing voucher, where she continues to be housed today, and she has started her own little garden there. Another one was a 51-year-old Native American woman who had been a nurse and had a family and a home, And all of that had fallen apart because of domestic violence, where she received substantial physical abuse, caused traumatic brain injury. She then also was recently recovering from cancer treatment, and her outlook on life was very bleak. She trusted no one. She'd been in and out of several programs. She kept leaving and fleeing. She'd been in and out of several programs with us, our street outreach program, a shelter program, the safe parking program. But our outreach staff continued to look for her and find her and provide support. Eventually, she did come back to the safe parking program with her cat, and she remained stable there for 6 months while she worked to find her own place. Today, she's housed, again with a housing voucher, because that's what we do. She receives case management from Arcata House Partnership and is stable. We have dozens and dozens of these stories. What we are not is we are not a parking lot. It is a program. It's staffed 24 hours a day. When people come to Arcata House Partnership, they have access to all of our services, and we do our very best to move people from being homeless to being permanently housed.
Thanks, Darlene. And I wanted to ask you, well, one, you highlighted an elder that became homeless, and we know now that's the fastest growing part of our homeless population. But what I was surprised about when I went and toured the site was how many people were actually employed. Not your employees, but
Yes.
the folks that were actually there and going to work every day, still holding down jobs, and there are families there with kids going to school too. And so that's, it's important to understand that people are living their lives in these situations, not just like it's not, other things are happening in their space. And so I just wanted to emphasize that. Was there anything else you wanted to emphasize?
I want to talk a little, just for a minute, about funding, because that's what's important. We have heard that there's opportunities, but if opportunities come without funding, it's not an opportunity for agencies like us to do that. For us, this safe parking program cost us $478,000 a year. That's $45 a night per person. That's less than what shelters cost us. That's certainly less than what it costs us, I think, to have people on the streets and in and out of emergency rooms. And so although this comes with a cost, I think the cost is that people's lives are saved, that people are not on the streets, that there's a positive impact to businesses who don't have people sleeping in front of their businesses and calling the police department to move people along. The impact is great across all of the community.
All right, great, thanks. Thank you, Darlene, for giving that explanation. I was gonna. There's two other folks I wanted to speak today, which. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay. You want to do questions now?
And my biggest fear, and I've been saying this, are you brought up funding, and that's the elephant in the world, the big elephant in the room. Are we worried about, with the shape of not this year necessarily, but the shape of the state and what they're saying is going to happen in the next few years? Is that what we're worried about, is the funding aspect of it? Because we get so much bang for this buck, like what you're providing, what Betty Chin provides. I mean, it's amazing, like you said, and Mike, being around Betty so long and everything else, that how many of them actually go out and find work. It's just when you're making the $2,500 a month or $3,000 a month, it's hard to take $1,800 out for your family to afford to feed and pay rent and utilities and stuff with everything the way it's going. So this is you're creating a great bridge gap there. So are you worried about the funding? Obviously you're worried about the funding. I mean, do you have answers of how we're going to, because as you say, the homeless are worried about funding, the teachers are worried about their funding, the sheriff is worried about his funding, everybody's worried about their funding, and their funding is the most important thing. And right now, we're going to have a tough stretch for a few years.
We are, and we're very worried. I think I'm not expecting to see any reduction in the permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing vouchers that we bring into the county, but I'm not sure that we're going to see an increase over the next couple of years. My biggest concern is for support for other programs like shelters, our regular shelter, Betty Shelter, the Mission, like these kind of programs, street outreach, and all of these make a real huge impact on our community, far greater than the person we serve, but on the community as a whole. And I'm very worried that we're not going to see some stable funding coming through for this.
Michelle?
The opportunity that the county is giving is a little different than yours, where it's not it wouldn't be a facility that is staffed. And what would you think the success of that could be? And what also, if someone in the community is in need, do they just come to you guys? And can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. We wouldn't apply to manage a parking program that isn't a program, that isn't helping people move from being homeless to being housed. There are other organizations that are interested in that kind of service, and that wouldn't be us. For us at Arcata House Partnership, our goal is always to get people housed. So that's what's important to us. I can't speak to what the success is. I think there's a very different population when we were managing the safe tent lots early on in COVID, a very different population than the people in our safe parking program. Those are, and people we work with through our street outreach program, they're not necessarily people that want to be housed or want to have those kind of services. The reason that our safe parking program is so successful is they are people that want to be housed, they want to go to work, they want their children to go to school, and they're committed to making a difference in their lives. And that's very different.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you. Thanks for all you do, too. Appreciate it.
Through the chair. So just as an emphasis, I would ask Arcata House to come, because they're an example, not necessarily I mean, there's kind of a spectrum of options. This is one of them. It's the only one that actually operates or is in existence, so this is what we have. And so I also asked the sheriff or the sheriff's representative through the undersheriff to speak to, for a moment, if you might, like how that service has been helpful and what you think about the potential of the expansion through the county. And again, this is trying to promote the concept here. So.
Well, if you had asked me this question about 5 years ago, I'd say this is an absolutely terrible idea, right? I've completely changed my mind when it comes to safe parking because of the example that Arcata House has set and other models throughout the state and country. This is a program that is actually vital so we can actually enforce the law. If we have nowhere to send people, then we can't actually enforce laws about people camping on public property or infringing on the rights of others. I would like the undersheriff, Justin Broda, to speak about our involvement with DHHS and how we're approaching this and how we're steering people towards this program, and how we do support safe parking as long as it's properly managed. This is not an autonomous zone where people get to go there and do whatever they want. We know that there are rules in life, and there are still rules when it comes to, people, that are homeless that need assistance. And a safe parking area is one of those places that still need to have rules, just like Arcata House has set forth. There is successes for people that are willing to put forth the effort to steer them towards housing. And I would like the county to model that as much as we can, as a cost-effective way as we possibly can. But I'd like the undersheriff to carry on that conversation.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Board. This is kind of something I could talk about all day, so you might have to pair me into a lane of what you want to talk about. But as the Sheriff said, I am a big supporter of this type of program. I think that with the complexities of homelessness and all the contributing factors that we have in our society today, and this isn't a unique issue to us, this is state and nationwide, but we have to look for different options. I hear people say all the time, well, can't these people just get a job or take care of themselves? And the answer is oftentimes no, or they might need a hand up, not a handout, or both. Everybody's issues and why they're in these situations is different and unique circumstances. I've seen projects like this locally with Arcata and not locally, but in other areas are very successful. I'm not saying that there's like a perfect blueprint now, as was mentioned by the sheriff and the other speaker, that there's still a lot of issues and logistics to figure out on how this looks. One of the problems is the one that we currently have is so centralized, it's almost inaccessible for people in the outlying areas of our county, which makes it difficult. And so I think that just like all the problems that cause people to be in these situations are unique and complex, I think the solution is also not just a one-size-fits-all. I think that we would have to look at something that addresses the remoteness of our county and the different population groups that make up those, you know, the homeless people and the impoverished people now. But, you know, I can tell you that the programs we currently have are a lifesaver for some, and they definitely are a problem solver for us. I mean, they don't fit everybody we deal with, and we try to get to services, but it is an option, and it helps us with the enforcement part, which, I mean, obviously we see the human side of it, and enforcement is only a tool to try to get people to comply with the law and to not infringe on other people's free use of property. But as you see, if you look around some of these areas, just the nature of how people are living in these homeless situations is taking away other people's free use of those public areas. And so we want to address the human side of it, but also the legal side of it, where we have all these public areas that are free for people to use safely and comfortably, but also not take away the fact that people have a right to live. And if they don't have a place to go, they're going to have to do that somewhere. You know what I mean? So again, I'm a supporter of this, and I'm willing to assist going forward. I don't claim to have the answers. I have done a lot of research in the field and connecting and through correspondence with other areas that are working on this. And I do think that this is part of the path forward. Another part of it, which is a whole other vein to talk about it, is mental health, right? I mean, a lot of people that are homeless are there for, you know, economy reasons, mental health reasons, substance abuse reasons, you know, domestic violence reasons. There's a lot of, and a lot of them are combinations of such. But I can tell you that you know, the conditions and the circumstances that a lot of the people that are in these situations are living in are not humane. They're not safe, and people are victimized. So I think getting people out of green belts and backyards and public areas and into places where we can at least make sure people are safe until they can get their services and try to follow one of these pathways forward to get back on their feet is the best way forward. How we do that financially and logistically isn't something I have the answer to, but I'm willing to be a partner in that going forward.
Thanks for that.
Thanks.
If there's not more questions for the sheriff, I just wanted to make sure that Connie Beck has a chance to talk about the nexus that the county services are in support of these, if that's all right.
And hopefully, the item says is about expanding the project for 2 years.
Yep.
I don't know if we're going to build this. I'm not so sure we don't bring this back. But somewhere in this, when we're talking, you have to understand, we did this 2 years ago, and we got nowhere. So now we're doing it 2 years,
Right.
2 years later, and then we've got a year and a half of, a little over a year and a half of Arcata House and their successes, and now when the money's getting tighter, so I think the sheriff wants to get on board and everything else. So what we need to do here is I want to hear all this, but I'm not so sure that we do it right here or we do it in a different format so we actually get some results for what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight the success that the county's had in terms of this, because oftentimes, you know, as you know, folks are not knowing what the county does in relation to these services. This seems like a pretty good opportunity to talk about that because we're offering this from a land use perspective, this opportunity, but then there's the part where you can do these things, you can do them with services, and I think there are opportunities to do them actually without services, which is kind of what's talked about, which can be done, but we don't know what that is. But what we do know is what we have in terms of what's been happening with Arcata. That's what we have as an example, and I just wanted to make sure that we had a highlight for that, and I wanted to make sure that folks understood that Arcata is doing that in partnership with not just Arcata House, but also
the county sheriff's department and our DHHS as well. That's actually taking a full, the approach is multi-agency, and that was the main point. So if there is any more questions
No, I
for
agree.
Connie, then I want to make sure that.
And I'd like to get Connie on here, because I don't think people realize that none of these programs run by the cities or anything else, they all start with DHHS saying, can you help us with this? That's the way it starts. So we don't necessarily beat the drum saying we're doing it, but we do, DHHS does a lot of work on this, so you're right. So do you want to take public comment, or do you want Connie? Connie, do you have anything to say on this?
I do have a couple of things.
Please.
I apologize for not being there in person today. I'm out with a pretty bad cold that's got a scary cough. So I'd just like to say that the safe parking program in Arcata actually hasn't been funded through DHHS or the Continuum of Care yet. It was started with City of Arcata and Arcata House Partnership. They are a wonderful referral source for our housing programs, but also other community partner programs. I think Darlene spoke about referrals from other agencies, and so it's not just DHHS, but all other community providers that are working with the homeless population. So that is one thing that I think is important. The other thing, Supervisor Bone, you had asked about the funding, and we do think that our homeless services funding is going to be reduced. We have our, I think it's round 5 of the HAP funding that will still be available, but there's also something that's relatively new through CalAIM that's called Enhanced Care Management, and our nonprofits and our home program will be starting to utilize that funding for these type of services, and that would be ongoing. So there is a little opportunity there for us to do this work with ongoing funding, which we haven't had for services for the homeless population in the past. All of the funding that we've received over the last 5 or 6 years has been one-time funding, and that really is funding that I've been worried about with the budget the way it is, maybe being taken back. So that is one thing. And then also just through the continuum of care, we have shared the ordinance with the other housing advocates and community partners that do this work. So I just wanted to mention that we have been sharing that information, and it, there was a lot of excitement when the ordinance was passed, and then since then we haven't seen much movement. So I appreciate having an additional 2 years for folks to be able to do something or try to do something around another safe parking program. I'd love to see one in southern Humboldt if that was a possibility. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Director Beck. And Supervisor Bushnell?
Thank you through the chair. Director Beck, when we talk about the safe parking and the capabilities of funding, we talk about especially Southern Humboldt, and a lot of the funding is, in my understanding, comes with needing to have program management during this safe parking. Is that true? Or what would be the availability for funding for someone that was to do this if they didn't have supervision at these parking areas?
I don't know, without supervision, I don't know that, funding could be approved. I do think that there has to be, a pretty solid, programming around it in order for some of the funding that we have currently through HAP. That doesn't mean that someone that has a private property that wanted to do something like this could do it without funding from the continuum of care. And or maybe that's something that planning and buildings funding could do. I'm not sure of that.
Thank you. I think the struggles for some of the unincorporated areas are just what you said. While we want to find solutions and the communities are begging for solutions, it also takes someone stepping up saying, I'm willing to be that person in charge. And we don't, it's a very time consuming and it takes a lot from someone. There's groups in Southern Humboldt, especially, Southern Humboldt's Housing Solutions for All that have been working on this for a long time. And and I help them with DHHS trying to find solutions down in one of the farthest areas removed from the central, from Eureka, which is where their services are provided. And also recognizing, a hand up, not everybody wants to move or relocate out of their area, which is one of the issues as well. We've had opportunities in my district to house people, but it's not in their own community, and that creates its problems as well. So thank you, Director Beck.
All right, we'll open this up to public comment.
Hello again, I'm Frederick Breckenridge, and boy, when it comes to momentum and fundraising, I'm a beast. I went Scuba Steve on this topic, not by choice. Clients of one of the proposed directors of the legal library, well, they told me I should be afraid of that attorney and said, I'll never have another place to live in Humboldt County. It's a small town. And unfortunately, when neglect is involved, there's always the chance of intentional. And I think this is where a one-time mentor of mine led our community down the most. So I can think of all kinds of ways to raise money for this. We could shut down Front Street, Howerson Park like we did to sell marijuana. Because we were watching it move down the range. We could do chili cook-off at say maybe Fireman's Park in Scotia. We could come up with all kinds of things. We could come up with the resources this county spent harassing me in an RV in Hydesville on Riverbar Road while I drove my Lamborghinis down the 36 and 101 during El Nino. And my mentor never once said, hey, let's get his RV up to safe parking.
Ken Sawatsky, I agree with the assessment that we're not going to get that much help from California. Our budget's upside down, our population's leaving, and the money people here are leaving in droves and going to where there's lower taxation. So you got to go to the federal government, basically. They're the only ones I know that can print money. The state can deficit spend. The financing has to come through there, or else you get private people willing to engage in this. For a long time, I've considered doing multiple tiny home villages, possibly not. The funding has to come, assistance has to come from what the county can make available to people, no matter what level of this kind of project is. It's all about carrots. And right now, it's just about financially not feasible because of the rules and regulations. So if you want these kind of things to happen, strongly support 24 months. That's kind of a given here. But if you want that, you're going to have to learn to relax the rules and regulations that cost us so much. In other words, such things as tiny home villages, I think possibly, I'm going to talk to John again and see where we're currently at. You don't have to put in all the curb gutter and sidewalk. You don't have to put in all the paved roads, and all these things add up so much that it does not become financially viable to do these projects here. So we're kind of a viewpoint where people like myself are deciding whether to continue taking our money out of country, out of state, or a willingness to partner up with some of us who are left here. There are good people out there with good hearts, and they're willing to do these projects, but it does take a team, and that's something that I think we'll be looking to the county for and see what their answers are. And again, that'll be another test to see whether you really want us to stay in the county and invest our money and time here, or take it somewhere where it may be more equitable, easy to do, and more appreciated. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Gordon Claverthy, running for First District Supervisor. I also agree. I think this is a great program. It's cost effective. It's great for the students that have probably just been kicked out of Cal Poly parking lot. They can find a safe space to park. I think we should look at expanding it to Southern Humboldt. There's definitely a lot of needs down there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Nezzie Wade, and I have a long history with this ordinance and working towards getting the permissions for having safe parking, safe sheltering. And I'm very much in favor of extending the timeline. It would be really important. I know back when all this started, there was comment made that nobody's going to try this project. And it was because it's onerous, it's hard to do. A lot for the reasons that Kent was talking about in terms of the costs and all of these things. When the pilot limits it to 15 people, that could be cost prohibitive as well. There are lots of different parts of it that we should probably explore, but I think the biggest thing in making this a successful program is that the county actually do what we would do with any other kind of initial program to implement it. You don't have a first-time homebuyer program and then just leave it on the shelf. You do a lot of work to get people involved and to work to coordinate and collaborate and make these opportunities possible. Right now, in this community, in Humboldt, we have more people who want to help with these kinds of projects than we've ever had before. Lots of different groups. Another barrier for these low-barrier projects is the regulations about how they can happen. And one of the things that I want to encourage you to think about is the thing that makes it possible for people who want to move out of a situation of being unhoused into some kind of stable community or experience is that sense of community. So, you know, the notion of having an institutional arrangement where people can go to and so forth is not the same thing as having community involved in creating these kinds of opportunities. So it's really important that we do this with a lot of groups, a lot of people who are interested to make it happen everywhere. Yes, Southern Humboldt certainly needs that, but so does Northern Humboldt. Everything in Humboldt County needs this kind of support. And then we can bring support services to them and do a lot more work. But it really does require that the county do the outreach to bring people to the forum to do this and to offer some incentives, whether it's, you know, easing some of those regulations. We do have a shelter crisis declaration. We've had that for a long time, and we should be able to use some of that still. So I think it's important to do it for 24 months, but just to do 24 more months with no other additional activities and engagement with the community and the groups to make it happen, and not just the big nonprofits. There are lots of community groups that want to help do this. So thank you. Please extend it and then work with all of us to make it happen.
Thank you.
Hi. This time I have notes. I am an adamant supporter of Measure A, and I feel so badly about all of the misinformation that is out there. I have voted since LBJ. That's how old I am. Arcata House, what Arcata House has done brings me to tears. Arcata House saved my adult daughter, who, as the whole world knows, has been with me since I found her in the Target parking lot the middle of October. We are doing fine. It's a sandpaper relationship because, as y'all know, I can be a cranky old battle axe, but we're getting there slowly. We both have tooth stuff holding that's probably going to happen sometime this month, bureaucratic mess ups, not delaying it. Thank you, Darlene. Under Sheriff Bro, his grandpa was one of the teachers at Eureka High that changed I don't know how many lives. I know that me and every one of my sisters who had him profited tremendously from before you take something into your brain, check out the source. And finally, Sheriff Hansel. Words fail me, but not really. I got a little time left. I've been on a couch next to him at the blood bank. I've been in his proximity when he wasn't in uniform at several basketball tournaments in Crescent City, and one of the Jaegers, the Highway Patrol Jaeger, was there also. These people are the kinds of people that if I never had a son. I raised 3 obstreperous daughters. But by cracky, we have a lot of male role models in Humboldt County to be incredibly proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and cannot believe I followed Nezzy.
There you go. All right,
Chairman, we do have one caller in Zoom.
please.
Caller 0151, you've been asked to unmute. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Dottie from Southern Humboldt. So I just wanted to, I'm a little bit confused on the item that we're talking about on the consent decree right now. Are we talking about elder abuse or are we talking about houselessness? It's really, in lots of cases, the same thing. Which, does it matter which one I'm making a comment on?
Yes, we're talking about the an extension of the safe parking resolution.
Okay, great. So the extension of the safe parking resolution absolutely is a must for all of Humboldt County. There's all kinds of people that have been helped. There are all kinds of people that have had other family members helped. My nephew, who died on the street, on the bus stop just some number of months ago this year, wouldn't have died if his car was allowed to be parked someplace. So that's one of the most important things to say, is that there are people that are dying because we're not being responsible enough to let them park a car and be inside. So for the record, this year I have housed, without any support from the county, over 20 people on and off, without any help from the county, that have been houseless without money. And I'm not getting help, and instead it's like, oh, it's not good enough, and it should be better, and all that stuff. There was a family just a few months ago that was outside in the rain, in the freezing cold, with a 6-year-old child, with 2 adults that had health issues, and 3 generations, and nobody could do anything about it in Southern Humboldt. There was nobody that could do anything. Nobody could offer anything. I had a house, and I said, okay, the house is in construction, but they can be at least inside the fence and have a bathroom to use and a bedroom to use. Nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole because there wasn't insurance on it and because the house wasn't like, perfect. So what about the people that want something, that need something? These people are willing to help. They're willing to have jobs. Almost every single person of the 20 people that I had was looking for work or had some kind of income coming in, but it wasn't enough to pay for any place to live. I could go on and on and on, and I don't know how many minutes or seconds I have left, but
25.
There's too many. Thank you. There's too many people that need help. There's too many people like myself or the Christian Science Church that's willing to step it up, that's willing to try to do something. But nobody cares. Nobody is listening. I went to the strategic planning meeting and said, I cannot do this anymore. And now
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no more callers on Zoom.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Thank you. Director Ford, coming back to the item of the extension, well, I'll make the motion so that we could have discussion if someone would want to second that we approve.
Second.
And so having that discussion, then we can extend it. And does that have a price tag behind it?
The extension does not. I think the thing that we do want to do, and absolutely appreciate Nezzy Wade's comments about needing to bring the community together, talk about how to make this happen and how to finance it. Darlene's comments about how much it's cost Arcata House is noted, and recognize that we need to find funding to make it happen. It's just not going to happen without that.
Thank you. And then I also want to appreciate Sheriff Hansel's comment about not supporting this in the past, but recognizing that this is the way to go now in Humboldt County and in the unincorporated areas, so that people can have a place to be, so that his deputies can do their jobs. Without that option, which currently in Southern Humboldt, there isn't a place for them to be, and it's not for lack of wanting or trying. I really have to recognize that people down there do want this, do recognize the need, and there are lots of groups, including with DHHS, that work towards this, but it is onerous, as someone said, and takes a lot of time and commitment, and not, it just can't be throw up a tent and there you go. And so I think that's what we need to recognize as well. But I'm glad the program is going to be available. I will make a commitment to my community to get that information out again, but we really need to have people take advantage of this to see if it can work.
Judge Wilson?
I just want to thank the board members and the staff for indulging the conversation around the example that we have in our community of safe parking with Arcata House and the city of Arcata and our support for that. Again, it was just as an example that we do have a program that does exist. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the model for everywhere and all of the things. I just want to say we have something that, with people in the field working on it today, that we can both use as to see what the opportunities are and really see what the challenges are too. And this would be the time to highlight that, because I think that, again, this is the only program currently in Northern California. So I think we should take some pride in that as a community, but also understand the tenuousness of that, of those programs, and be mindful. Again, thanks the board for letting us discuss this today. So with that, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, so with this vote, we're also getting direction, like I asked earlier, we're going to come back with a little more profound effect rather than just extending this, actually doing something.
We'll take that as part of the board's recommendation, or part of the board action to do this, is to bring a report back. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes, and also thanks staff.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
And Chair Bone?
Yep.
Thank you. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. All right. We'll close the public hearing.